Snow on the roof, light in the sink. I spill that resin and I watch it blink. Cup full of glitter stuck to my sleeve. This little studio feels like make-believe. Camera on the tripod, leaning like a tree. I talk to the lens like it's family.
Hi and welcome back to Georgie's Gorgeous Gifts. As you've just seen there, we're going to be creating a couple of Christmas decorations. So this one is a candle holder, so you can pop 2 candles in it, and it comes in 3 different parts. So this is the base. So my plan with this is to make this just a plain red base, because you're only going to see the bottom of this. So I'm using some red pigment paste from Temu and giving it a good mix. Now this red is probably the reddest paste that I found, and I have tried a fair few, because red is an awful difficult colour to try and get right without it looking pink or just not red. And because I want to add a bit of sparkle to this and try and make it a bit more red, I'm adding some of the Let's Resin chrome powders to the resin. Normally you would put this on the mould, and it is quite expensive to be putting into resin like this, but I think it'll just give it that extra sparkly kind of deeper red that I'm after, and you can see the shine in it already. It's changed it from just a matte red to like a shiny chrome, I suppose, red. To be honest, I wished I'd have popped a little bit more of this in, because when it was cured you couldn't quite see the chrome effect. So after giving this a really good mix, scraping all around the sides and the edges, I then pour it into this base. Once this base is full, I then use my stick to go around all the edges to make sure that we haven't got any bubbles. As this is a new mould, I have washed it with warm soapy water, and that takes away the static out of it. And I've done the same with this piece. So this is the second piece. So this is going to go onto the base to be able to fit little trees and houses and the 2 candles. So I'm using white pigment paste from Just For You online for this, which is now Apex Resin. I don't think they do this paste anymore, but I did buy a fair few tubs before it shut, because this is my go-to white. You can see the white does take a lot of mixing, and especially with the white. I mean, I do this with all the pastes, but more so with the white, and I'll show you why in a minute. Because even though I've mixed this thoroughly, there is still loads and loads of excess white pigment on my stick. So as you can see here, once I've given it a good mix, I then scrape my stick along the edge of the cup, and you can see how much paste is coming off. Then mix that in. I do give my stick a wipe to get rid of all the excess paste, but you can see where it's not quite mixed in properly, and that's what you would get in your piece. The camera isn't really picking it up as well, but even around all the edges of the cup, so you can see here where it's not quite mixed in and it's stuck to the edges. So I do give that a good scrape. And like I say, in particular, this is quite bad with the white, not so much with the other colours. And you can still see here, even after all this time mixing, there's still loads of excess. So after fully making sure I've scraped all the sides, I then wipe my stick with a baby wipe, and then I give it another good mix just to make sure that all that paste is fully mixed in. Now, I know many of you will have already seen me do this on my channel, but there are new people joining every day. So yeah, it's always good to just repeat yourself now and again. So now my paste is fully combined and mixed in with the resin. I then just pour a white base all the way into the gaps and the grooves of this base, or secondary base. Now with resin, the more places that you've got where the resin meets is where you're more likely to get the bubbles. So when I'm pouring a piece like this, I do try and only get the resin to meet once or twice, just to try and prevent that. After I've filled this right to the top, I then go in with my stick and into all the gaps and the grooves, again just to make sure that we haven't got any bubbles. Like I said, this is a new mould, and you generally find on your first pour, if there is any bubbles, where you're likely to get them in the future. So as you can see here, I am using my G3 tray because I didn't want to spill it, moving it into it. And now we're on to the next piece. So these are for the little gaps that are on top of the tray. So the little trees, a couple of houses, and a couple of lampposts. So for the trees, I'm using this green holographic glitter mixed in with my resin. And you can see here I'm using yogurt pots to mix my resin in if it doesn't need measuring. And I have snipped the corner off just to make it easier to pour, because the amount of cups I was going through was just crazy. I went through 8 litres of resin in 3 weeks last month. Now the resin that I always use is the craft resin 1:1 ratio. There is discount codes for not just craft resin but most of the UK resins in the description. There's also worldwide codes for anyone else. So because I'd accidentally spilled some of the gold mica powder that I've just mixed up on this mould, I decided to just flick little bits of gold into the trees. So it's going to look like there's like lights on the front of the trees. So I'm just grabbing my stick, dipping it into the pot and then flicking it onto the mould. No rhyme or reason, just where it lands. The gold I'm using here is Craft Resin's Shimmer Gold. And I'm just popping the gold into the lampposts. Now these are really, really thin, and you need to make sure that you get into all the gaps and the grooves, because again the resin sits on top of the mould rather than runs into it, so you do have to pull it apart a little bit just to get into the little gaps properly. And you can see I've made a right mess of that. So on to the trees. So for the trees, I'm just pouring into the bottom of the cavities because I want the tops of the trees to have like snow effect on the top. So I'm just pouring halfway into every one of these trees, and then I get my white that I've got left from the second base and just pop it into the tops of every one. So the green will mix into the white and, like I say, look like there's snow on the ends of the trees. I wished I'd have done this to the roofs of the houses as well, but I'll have to do that after we're finished and it's fully cured. And then I just top up the rest of it with the green, making sure that it's all full and that it goes up to the white. Now for the houses. So first of all, I pour in some clear because I don't want these to be solid gold. I want them to have some sort of detail, and then I just go in with the gold on top, just literally pouring all the way over. I don't mix this in as such, I just drag my stick across the top just to make sure that the gold is all the way across, and then I just leave this to cure. Again, this goes into my G3 curing machine with the other pieces. So I had this mould from Amazon and it comes as a pack with a separate decoration. Now these are 8 cavities that they come with it, and like a bauble ring to put them in. So I'm just going to decorate these in various different ways. So for the snowflake, I'm going in with some blue resin tint, the cayenne blue, and it's just a generic one from Amazon. And then I just go in with my stick with a few blobs of the white pigment paste just to give it some sort of detail. This will create like a snow type of effect within the resin because the white pigment paste is heavier than the resin with just the resin dye in. And then I just go in with some clear resin and just top the mould up. I wished I'd have added a little bit of either glitter or mylar flakes to this one just to give it that extra bit of a sparkle, but maybe on the next ones. The problem is that you've got these 8 pieces, but you've only got one of the rings. Now, just something to be aware of. Did you just see that? I'll repeat it for you. I put this on slow motion, but can you see all the mica powder that's in the air? You can see it all sparkling towards the camera and into the air, and you're actually breathing that in. And one of the reasons why I do my voiceovers is because I do wear a mask when I'm pouring resin. Even though craft resin is VOC friendly, it then becomes toxic when you're adding different colour pigments and glitters, etc. to it. So back to this mould. For this start, I'm using the exact same process as I did for the houses. I'm just pouring the gold in, and then I go in with the clear. So it's just the opposite way around. And I use the clear just to fill it all the way to the top. And because I had some gold left, I'm just filling in this reindeer as well in just the gold. And then doing exactly the same and topping that up with the clear. Then I'm just using my stick to go into all the gaps and all the grooves just to make sure that it's completely filled. And we will be adding some detail to this once it's fully cured. Now for the last tree, for this one I'm just adding again the green glitter to some clear resin and then just pouring that directly into the mould. Nothing fancy with this one, but like I say, the pain is that you've got to do multiple baubles to fit them into. So if I wanted to display every one of these, I'd have to do 8 of the rings. So what I might do is just sell 2 of the rings with 8 of these other little bits so that you can decide which ones you want, as I have quite a big Christmas market coming up. So for the next 4, I have sped this up for you because I'm doing just exactly the same as I did with the previous one, using what's left of the colours. I did add a little bit of sparkle into this in the form of some mylar flakes and some glitter into the snowflake, but then I'm just adding the rest of the colours into these other 4 pieces. And this is the ring that I was on about. For this one, I'm going for the red again. And after I'd give this a good mix once again, I did in fact add some white mylar flakes to this just to give it a little bit of extra sparkle. And then I pour it all the way around the ring. Now, the idea is to get it all the way around and not in that middle bit, but you can see here I get into a right mess. So I'm just trying to scrape it all back into the gaps and the grooves. At this point my resin was quite thick because I had made all the previous pieces. I mixed up about 450 mils of resin in total because I had a couple of other projects to do. But this took up the majority of it. After getting in a right mess and making sure that I've gone in all the grooves with my stick, just making sure that there's no extra air bubbles in it, I then left that to cure. So with my excess resin and what I've got left, I decided that I'm just going to make these little reindeers. Again, these are new moulds and these ones are off Amazon, but I believe Let's Resin have done a very similar set. I'm not too sure whether I like these because they are a bit random coloured and I'm not one for just any random colour. I think there's got to be some sort of logic behind the colours. I don't know, that's just the way my head works. But I'm just scraping off all the rest of the resin and just popping it into these reindeer moulds. And again, I have sped this bit up for you, but I'm just pouring the white in and giving it a bit of a mix. I then get some white sparkly glitter and pour that over the top. And then pour some white just to fill his antlers in. For this next one, I am going just plain red with the mylar flakes, which is a bit more pleasing for me than the other one. And then I pop them into my curing machine. These are now fully cured and it only took about an hour and a half. The G3 machine is absolutely fantastic. So let's demold this one. So like I said, this is the base for the candle holder. So you'll only see really the front of this. And you could do this in whatever colour you like. I think I'm going to go for a chunky glittery silver next. And it was relatively easy to demold. I mean, I'm not too sure why it's got like a gap the one end. But yeah, I'm sure I'll find out. So remember to pop your moulds the right way back after you've demolded them because that's the one thing that will ruin them. And then it's time to demold this one. Now you can see that there's little gaps and holes in this one. And this is one for the light apparently to come through the little holes. And the little gaps are to pop the trees and these houses into. And I think these have come out really, really nice. So they do need a little bit of cleaning up. So I do just use my scissors to pop through the holes. Being careful not to put the scissors straight through my fingers. And then I just pick off all the excess on the back. And I do this to the bits that need it. I did off camera go into the little holes and the grooves with my nail file. And I have a set that are all different shapes and sizes, thin ones, etc. So I managed to get into the little holes with that. And then slot them into the different slots. Now you can put them wherever you like, but I wanted to put the bigger trees behind and then the smaller trees in front. So I have sped this bit up for you and I will do close-ups in the glamour pictures. But these pieces slotted into these holes really, really well. And there wasn't any sort of falling forward or, yeah, it suited it. So this is probably my favourite Christmas mould that I have at the minute. So I can't wait to do a few more of these. But once all the pieces are in, it then goes onto the base. Now, I don't recommend using real candles for resin because when resin gets hot, it can burn and it can become quite flexible. So I would recommend using the battery operated candles, although it does take a lot for this resin to melt. I have got candle holders made of resin that I do actually use real candles with, but I'm not advising that in any way, shape or form. That's just my personal preference. So now the ball is ready to be demoulded. Now this did take a lot of clearing up because, as you've seen, it was really messy, but I just used my metal files just to get into all the gaps and the grooves once I'd poked it out with a pair of scissors, just to tidy it up a little bit. And the idea is that these pieces will hang from the middle of this bauble. And now it's time to demould the 4 little pieces that we did. And I think these are looking really, really nice. I love the extra sparkle in this snowflake. And then the white edges on this tree looks like there's little bits of snow on it. But like I said, it's a bit annoying that you can only pop one of these pieces into each of these rings. So I would have to make 8 of them in order to fit the pieces in. This is how it would go. So you attach through the top hole, and there's a hole in the top of these pieces, and you just attach the 2. So I will be using either some ribbon or some, you know, the clear thin wire that you can't see, just to attach the 2 pieces. So these are just the other 4 pieces and then the 2 reindeers, and these are really nice because they've got the holes in. And then we have the snowflake that I just added some white into. Like I say, I wished I'd have added the sparkle into that. Then the star, I much prefer these pieces to the other ones, and they are slightly bigger. So I suppose these could be sold separately as just decorations on their own. And you can see the difference in the sizes of the pieces. And I've also made one just with mylar flakes, and I think the snowflakes will look really nice inside these. So again, that's personal preference on how you want to decorate them. Now for the reindeers. The red has gone far too much in his nose, so I might top that up with just a little bit of gold. But you can see the holographic sparkle with the gold, and it just needs a bit of tidying up. Again, I will go in with my metal nail file. And for the red one, and I will pop a few little bits of detail or Merry Christmas with vinyl across these just to finish them off. I will in fact be making some of these for my tree with the kids' names on. But if you haven't got a Cricut, then you can use stickers. So we are now done. Let me know in the comments which ones are your favourites. So I'll leave you with some glamour photos. I've been Tony from Georgie's Gorgeous Gifts. Stay safe, happy crafting, and bye for now.
Welcome to my little place. Georgie's Gifts with style.